lights are back on, and nobody's still home. But here we are. It's the next day. I know I posted yesterday's for this morning, so let's pretend like it's Thursday, even though it is Wednesday because they're mowing right now. Drives me absolutely bonkers. And it stormed this morning, so it's wet. You know, I mean, whatever, except for the fact that they wake me up at 8:30 in the morning, which I know, first world, blah, blah, blah. But, you know, it's annoying. And I can be annoyed by it because that's just the way it is. It would be nice that if during the summertime they go to an every other week schedule, just like the other mowing people did. But these folks seem very gung-ho, and because the former people were not as good, apparently, and old people are gonna welcome the mowing every week, so. And then they'll get the bill for it, and then that'll be fun to hear people complain about how much it costs for mowing because they were out here every week because they were told, at least with the old mowing company, they came out, evaluated, and said, you know what? That grass could probably go another week without being mowed. And that happened. So we'll see how that turns out when the budget comes out at the end of the year. I'm very not excited, and I very much don't give a shit. Guatemala, notes of honey and orange with a clean finish. And we know that to be true. It was an absolutely delicious coffee from Island Roasters down in New Smyrna. It smells marvelous, and it tastes even better. But we are going to do 28 grams. Look at that. Ooh, I did that, didn't I? Yeah, I did. That was not planned. Sometimes I watch Cook's Country, the America's Test Kitchen. I love that series. The people on there are so informative and a lot of fun to listen to. Their banter sometimes just gets so great. They kind of stopped doing the banter as much, which kind of is sad. I really like the banter. But sometimes they have their little thermometers and they're like, this needs to be 160 degrees. And then the thermometer go right up to 160 degrees. And I'm like, I wonder if she's got one of those thermometers where you can hit a button and stop the number so it doesn't go up any higher. You know, that kind of thing. It's just a lot of trickery and tomfoolery in order to fool the viewer into thinking they're a little bit more perfect than they are. But, you know, they don't really have to do that though, because their stuff is really great, and I like watching them making all of those wonderful recipes and coming up with new stuff. And then their product reviews are just fabulous. I remember somebody started complaining because they thought they had an OXO bias, because a lot of their top winning stuff was OXO, O-X-O, their kitchen stuff. And it was really funny because it's like, no, they just make pretty good stuff. And then, of course, the people that come in and say, my OXO broke, and it's like, sorry, we've got a lot of OXO stuff, and I don't think I've had anything break yet. I've got this on a medium. Also, thank you very much for giving me grinder options. I really appreciate it. And grinder, as in coffee grinder, not swipe left, to look at. So I'm very excited to go and take a look at those grinders. Hand grinders are cool. It's just, you know, like I had said before, the last one I had, it was not premium. It was sub-premium, because you would turn it and sometimes a beam would get stuck and it would just click rather than try to grind through it, which probably saves the machine, but makes it a lot harder to grind. And I had it at like a medium setting because they had a little knob down there that made it appear to at least adjust the ceramic grinder that was burr that was in there. So anywho, let's grind this up. And this is why we spritz the beans. Look at that. That's a really nice grind. There are little boulders in there, but then again, you know, as stated before, I could probably take this a little bit lower and there'll be larger pieces, but I'm actually pretty happy with the way that turns out, because spritzing the beans, it works. Absolutely works. All right, so 400 milliliters of water are going to go into this Chemex when we get to that point. Yeah, yesterday, so the power went out at around 7:45-ish in the morning. First, they predicted about 11 o'clock for it to come back on, and then they predicted 7:30 p.m. for it to come back on, which was a bit of a bummer. In the end, it came back around 3:45 in the afternoon, which was great, but of course not enough time for me to get everything together and then upload it without, interrupting a bunch of other different things that we needed to have go on. So I finished it up last night and uploaded it. And then I forgot to schedule it. So it went up probably about midnight when it was done processing and uploading onto YouTube. If you've watched it overnight, I really appreciate that. I'm sorry you were up, but that's just what happened. So yeah, the electricity went out. So I was outside a lot. I even went and I picked up my guitar that I got for Christmas 4 years ago and tried to start playing. And boy, does that hurt. That hurts a lot. I don't know how long you have to play. I was going for about 20 minutes trying to figure things out, and it was just not. It really hurt. And I don't know if my fingers, I don't know if I can do things. It might be a lost cause for me to learn how to play the guitar. I just mobility issues, and tops of my fingers were just, which, is going to happen. If you're learning guitar, even if you have a good free range of motion, playing the guitar, learning the guitar, very difficult. I like music. I like to think I'm a little musically inclined, but still, I've still got age not on my side. There we go. We got temperature. So yeah, I sat outside a lot yesterday. It was actually quite enjoyable. I sat outside, the wind was blowing. I think it got to about 77, 76 degrees. Sat outside, drank my coffee, came back in, got an iced tea, went back outside, sat, Not much else to do when the power is out. And when you have a house that the majority of things that you put forth to do is governed by electricity, it can be difficult to find something to do when the power goes out. But those generators, man, we are surrounded by people that bought generators. So for that entire time, the generators were on. And the worst part is, you sit outside and it's just a rumble. It's just a rumble of generators. So you have to sit and listen to that. But there are plenty of birds out front here, which is really nice. So you get to listen to the birds. But that's, yeah. And then the house right next to us, our neighbor, he has a generator. But I don't think he's been at his house in like a month and a half, because he travels, which, he should, which is great. I'm glad that he travels and he does stuff and he's not stagnant and just sitting at home. But his generator was on, and I'm sure whatever hot dogs or bachelor chow he had in the fridge is very safe and sound, even though he's not there to enjoy it at all. Oh well. I am glad that we decided not to get one. They're just loud. I mean, I suppose they're nice to have, but we really don't have anything pressing that needs to be powered constantly. The refrigerators, as long as you don't open them, are going to be fine, for a day, day and a half. Freezer's going to be fine for a day, day and a half, as long as you don't open it. And there's no reason to open it. I had tonkatsu ramen, which I may have regretted eating yesterday. I heated up the water and then applied all of the packets and whatnot. And even after the 4.5 minutes, the noodles were still really crunchy. And there was a certain taste that I don't remember them having when I first had them like a month ago. So, I mean, they're fine. They're good for a long time. It's just, I don't know, maybe the packaging of the spices vary per box. They're little tubs, like this big by that big. And they're tonkatsu, but they're just pork flavor. There's no meat unless you count the little desiccated meat pieces that are floating with the noodles alongside the very dried out. What is that? It's probably spring onion. So, I mean, it tastes fine, and it's good in a pinch, especially when there's no electricity and all you have is gas to cook on. All you have is gas to cook on. First world, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. When all you have is gas to cook on, hot water does the trick. Sometimes I hear myself complain, and I'm like, why are you absolutely complaining about that, you total dweeb? Why complain about that? People out there right now without certain things, and you're like, well, you know, if you have to cook on gas. Such a wonderful smell from this Guatemala roast. Medium. They do sell theirs in 1 pound bags rather than in 12 ounces, which is nice, I guess. I mean, it's more consistent, I suppose. Yep, they're still out there mowing, now they're blowing. I don't know if they're just going faster or if they're just taking longer breaks because the rain stops. And then they do something, and then the rain comes back and they stop. It was pretty steady this morning. It will always amaze me how coffees can reflect fruit. You know, I mean, coffee itself is a fruit. I mean, it's the bean that comes from the fruit, the berry, and how it can take on other flavors depending on the region that it's in, you know, and what it's surrounded by is just absolutely fascinating to me. And this is just a delicious, citrusy, and, you know, clean finish is an interesting thing to put on the side of the bag. Because you're like, what exactly is a clean finish? And, you know, if I were to, in my way of not knowing anything, describe a clean finish, you know, it would be this coffee. Because I've had some ones that are pretty harsh at the end. You know, you swallow and it's like, that's not what it was to start with. But this just ends really clean. It's really refreshing, strangely enough. The bitterness is very, very minimal. It's just great. And you get a nice little sweet taste of honey, and then you get this nice little citrusy kind of kick. And I mean, these are all notes, which means that they are incredibly subtle. So it's not like it's punching me in the teeth with citrus, but you can actually just kind of taste it. It's just there in the profile. And it just sounds like a lot of people that talk about coffee are just talking out of their ass. It really does. This is sweet and benevolent, and it has notes of pansies and small little fairy dust. You know, sometimes they just sound so pretentious in how they describe these things. And then you get a nice cup of coffee, and you're like, oh my gosh, you know what? There is a weird note of citrus. Oh my gosh, there is a weird honey note. Oh my God, taste that coffee and chocolate for some reason. You know, it's just really funny because, you know, until you get yourself deep into it as a hobby, you're just watching these people on YouTube and you're like, what? You do what for how long? Dude, I ain't got time for that. So it reminds me of the past vacation. I was using drip coffee maker at the house, and I was using the coffee that I bought, and I had to run water through it 3 times, super hot, in order to get everything that accumulated, because it doesn't look like anyone had used it for a minute. So it was really gross. But by the time I got to the end and the hot water had basically just destroyed every living organism that may have been in there, it actually made a wonderful cup of coffee. And I used that s'more time from Bones in it because I bought it pre-ground at a Publix that was down there. And it actually tasted really good. I mean, it wasn't in a Chemex that extracts the most amount of flavor. It wasn't in a Clever that gives a little bit more clarity or whatnot. It was in a brewing basket in a drip coffee maker that went down into a glass carafe that sat on a hot plate. I mean, that's all that it was. But it's still, after being cleaned out and using the proper like paper to filter and whatnot, it still made a great cup of coffee. So, I mean, you can start anywhere. And to be honest, if you love what's coming out of what you've got, you're under no obligation to start going ham on all of these different items that you could buy. But, you know, if I were to give out recommendations, I would definitely say, get yourself a Chemex. And since this coffee is not very expensive, I would go to coffeensb.com and order the Peruvian. If you don't have a grinder, order it ground. It'll last a nice long time, and just play with that. I mean, the Chemex is just such a wonderful, simple machine that does basically what you want it to do. You can grind it coarse, with a little less contact time on the beans. You can grind it fine, make it so that it drains a little slower, so there's a lot more contact with the grinds, and you get a little bit more sharper, more stronger flavored cup of coffee. No matter what you do, you're still going to get the same amount of caffeine out of it. So you don't have to worry about that so much. And this is just me regurgitating everything that I've learned off of YouTube folks that love coffee. So the information is out there. If this is something that you really want to get into, it's fun. Unless you have a strong reaction to caffeine, it doesn't really harm anyone. It certainly doesn't harm you. Like I said, unless you have a strong reaction to caffeine. And then there are some, my understanding is there are some really tasty decafs that are out there, but that's something you might have to look up on your own, because I really don't want to get into decaf. I'm fine with what I have. So, Thank you so much for watching this morning. I really appreciate it. Because we're doing this a day in advance right now, there'll be one up on Friday. Have a look at it. I don't know what it's going to be yet. Maybe I'll get down the Peruvian and we'll have some Peruvian coffee and talk about the day. Until then, I hope you have a wonderful one, and we'll see you later. Bye.